Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carole Copeland Thomas, and we are very glad that you are joining us today, either live or with our recording, to Never Again, Conversation with the Descendants of the Elaine Massacre. This is going to be a moving experience where we're recalling some very troubling days back in 1919 that have had long-lasting effects on the entire country, not let alone Elaine, Arkansas. And talking to the descendants and those who have been impacted by this experience will help us to realize the responsibilities that we have in our country, in our community, in our nation, in our world, to have cross-cultural relationships and respect and dignity for all people. I'm going to bring on board those who know this subject best. They're going to welcome our audience today. Mayor Lisa Hicks Gilbert. She is the mayor of Elaine, Arkansas, and a descendant of the Elaine, Arkansas massacre, Bobby Anderson Jr. Mayor Gilbert and Bobby Anderson, take it away.
Hello, thank you all so much for being here. As Ms. Carole said, my name is Lisa Hicks Gilbert. I am the current mayor of Elaine, Arkansas, and also the founder and managing director of Descendants of the Elaine Massacre of 1919, more commonly known as DOME 1919. And what I'm going to do right now is just give you a little synopsis of the history of the Elaine Massacre. The Elaine Massacre was a horrific event where hundreds of African Americans were killed by white mobs and soldiers. The massacre was triggered when Black sharecroppers were meeting in a church in Hoopsboro, Arkansas, 3 miles from Elaine. They were meeting to organize and hire an attorney to fight for a fair share of the profits from the crops they harvested and a fair record of their accounts at the plantation stores. On the night of September 30th, 1919, 104 years ago today, during this meeting, shots rang into the church and the sharecroppers were attacked by white men and plantation owners who wanted to maintain their economic dominance. The violence escalated and spilled into Elaine and surrounding communities when the KKK and other whites from surrounding communities as far away as Mississippi joined the mob, and the governor sent over 500 troops from Camp Pike in North Little Rock to quell the supposed insurrection. Over the next 3 to 5 days following the shooting and burning of the Hoopsboro church, the troops and vigilantes indiscriminately arrested and killed any Black person they encountered, regardless of age or gender. The exact number of victims is still unknown, but some estimates range from 200 to over 800, making the Elaine Massacre one of the deadliest racial conflicts in U.S. history and part of the Red Summer of 1919, a series of violent outbreaks across the country that targeted African Americans. The aftermath of the massacre was equally unjust. The authorities blamed the Black sharecroppers for the violence and arrested hundreds of them. 12 were sentenced to death by electrocution, while others received long prison terms. None of the white perpetrators were ever held accountable. The Elaine Massacre is a tragic example of the brutality and oppression that African Americans faced in the Jim Crow era. It also shows the courage and resilience of those brave sharecroppers who fought for justice and equality against overwhelming odds. Today, I hope you learn more about our ancestors, and more importantly, learn that educating not just about American history, African American history, but understand that African American history is American history. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very moving and disturbing historical reflection. Bobby Anderson.
Thank you, Carole Copeland, and thank you, Mayor Hicks. My name is Bobby Anderson Jr. I am a descendant of the Elaine Massacre. It is an honor for you all to be here and to learn more about the massacre that happened over 100 years ago. It is important that you learn and understand our history when right now in this country, they're trying to remove our history or keep us silent. That is why we said never again as the subject line. So like Mayor Hicks said, learn, understand, ask many questions that you have on the panelists, for the panelists who are here, and they are here to answer your questions, and they'll be able, and they welcome you. I welcome you. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Bobby. And you have the honor of now introducing Dr. Chris Jones and this wonderful message that he is going to deliver. Bobby?
Thank you, Carol. Now I want to present Dr. Chris Jones. He's going to give a welcome message, welcoming you to today's event.
Thank you so much. I'll take a point of personal privilege. I know Dr. Chris Jones when he was working on his master's degree and doctorate degree at MIT here in Boston, where I am located. He was a wonderful and very active member of my church, Bethel AME in Boston. So big shout out to Reverend Dr. Chris Jones and all the things that he has done here in this area, and certainly what he is doing for the people of Arkansas. Chris Jones.
Greetings. Welcome to this special event today. My name is Dr. Chris Jones. I'm a Pine Bluff native, and I was recently the 2022 Democratic nominee for governor of Arkansas, the first African-American nominated by any major party here in the state. I also founded an organization called Vortex. Vortex PAC is a PAC focused on flipping the 4 congressional seats here in Arkansas so that we have true representation in Washington, D.C. But today I'm excited to welcome you to this event and to thank you for coming. Thank you to the participants who are here. Thank you to the Elaine community for continuing to bring us together. Thank you to my special friend, Lisa Hicks Gilbert, the mayor of Elaine and the founder of the Descendants of Elaine Massacre 1919. I want to really appreciate you all for doing the hard work of learning our past and our history, because we can't grow unless we learn and understand and know our history, of taking that learning and creating and shaping a new future right here in the present. So I want to thank you for doing that. And I want to ask you to lean in, engage, ask each other the tough questions. Question your own assumptions about the past. Be creative and unlimited in your thinking about the future, because that's what we need in this moment, in this time. That's how we honor the past. And that's how we recognize the deadliest massacre in U.S. history right here in Elaine. I know there's so much that we have to offer, and I'm thankful for you all being here. Now, in closing, I want to say, get ready for what's coming next. You're going to see a short trailer of a film, Echoes from Elaine, because my wife and I are also co-producers on this film. It talks about the history of Elaine, and it really brings together 2 families in reconciliation. So again, thank you for being here. Thank you for checking out the film Echoes from Elaine. And thank you for doing the hard work of making all of our community better together. God bless you all.
And
Dr. Chris Jones, more in terms of that trailer as the program proceeds. Bobby Anderson, you have someone to introduce.
Yes, I'm very excited to introduce this beautiful, awesome person. Her name is Carole Copeland Thomas from Boston, Massachusetts, and she was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. Michigan, go blue, home of the Wolverines. I love it. She is a beautiful woman, and I asked her if she can moderate today's event. Not so, and so much, I used to be her executive assistant. And so it is a deep honor and a privilege to introduce to you our moderator, Carole Copeland Thomas.
Thank you so much, Bobby. It's an honor to be with you and be with all who are experiencing this moment, and just talking about the relevancy of the experience of Elaine Massacre over 100 years ago, what happened during that time period. And to set the context, I know that we have experts who are going to talk to us today, but keep in mind that the period of the 1920s, 1919, ending World War I, the military occupation, obviously, in Europe, and the American participation in the war. We had the flu epidemic that took place during that time period. And we also had the growth of the Ku Klux Klan. They were at their zenith, their highest point in many instances during the 1920s, even though they had started after the Civil War around 1867. But they grew to the point of maximum size and power and legislative influence in the 1920s that now sort of has had a ripple effect into today's time. So that's the backdrop of what we're talking about. Another book that Bobby gifted me several months ago was the Arkansas Race Riot. I don't think you're going to be able to see it because of my green screen, but Ida B. Wells was one of the few journalists, certainly in the African-American community and certainly in mainstream community, to cover the race and realize the detrimental circumstances of what had happened. There's been several large biographies written about her, but she actually wrote this book that is a true account of what happened in Elaine, Arkansas. And with that said, I know that her name is going to sort of reverberate through all the conversations that we're going to hear today. What we're going to do is to have a brief presentation, words of reflection by our panelists, who I'm going to introduce to you in just a second. And then we're going to take a little break, come back. We're going to see the trailer video that Dr. Chris Jones talked about, and then have a discussion about the then, the now, and the future, about what this means in the context of our society. Talking about, has our society grown any? Are we better off now than we were in 1919? We're going to have these kind of conversations to set the path and the way forward. So I'd like to take just a minute to let you know about these remarkable individuals who you are going to have a chance to hear. And I'm just going to go in the order that I have them here on the sheet. Marcus Walker was born and raised in the Bronx, and he attended Brooklyn Technical High School and then the State University of New York. Upon graduation, he attended Emerson College here in Boston, where I'm located. He earned his master's degree in visual and media arts. And in 1994, Marcus began working for Blackside, the documentary company best known for the landmark series Eyes on the Prize with Henry Hampton. Know that name well. In 2003, Marcus decided to become a teacher, and he went to UMass Boston, graduated with his master's degree in 2004. And for 20 years of experience, he's been with the Boston public school system. He spent 14 years at Excel High School, and presently he is in his 6th year teaching humanities for the Fenway High School here in Boston. 2011, Marcus taught a summer graduate course about race and class in urban education entitled Race and Power in the Urban Classrooms at Harvard University. And I should say that I was at Harvard yesterday, where they inaugurated the first Black and the second woman president of Harvard University, Dr. Claudine Gay. It was a spectacular program and service, even though it was very wet outside. Marcus spent 9 summers teaching this intense and much valued course, and Marcus also served as a Teach Plus Policy Fellow. From 2013 to 2015, he was awarded a College Board Professional Fellowship, and the rest is history in terms of his illustrious career. I'll probably jump in now and talk about his father. Ivor Walker was born in Kingston, Jamaica, where he developed a love of sports and excelled at track and field. Ivor immigrated to the United States in 1966 and studied at the RCA Institute before embarking on a career in electronic circuits and systems for over 40 years. Shortly after beginning his career, Ivor was introduced to Sheila Black, and there was an instant connection culminating in their 50-year love affair and marriage. They have 2 children and 3 grandchildren, and Ivor especially enjoys spending time with his grandchildren, and he currently lives in Wilmington, Delaware. He is the father of Marcus Walker. We have Chester Johnson. Chester Johnson is a poet and nonfiction writer who grew up 1 county removed from the Elaine Race Massacre. He is the author of several poetry books and has written extensively on race and civil rights, composing the Litany for the National Day of Repentance. That's October 4th, started in 2008, when the Episcopal Church apologized for its role in slavery and related evils. Several of his writings are part of the J. Chester Johnson collection in the Civil Rights Archives at Queens College. And his most recent book, Damaged Heritage, The Elaine Race Massacre and a Story of Reconciliation, was an Amazon bestseller and appeared on the Goodreads International multi-year list of best nonfiction books. For 8 years, he served as a poet on the draft, continuing the retranslation of the Psalms in the Book of Common Prayer for the Episcopal Church. He was educated at Harvard College and the University of Arkansas. That's J. Chester Johnson. And then we have Mayor Hicks, Mayor Lisa Gilbert, Mayor Lisa Hicks Gilbert. She's currently living in her hometown of Elaine, Arkansas. Lisa is the volunteer program manager with Lee Street Community Center. A descendant, Lisa founded the Descendants of the Elaine Massacre of 1919, which focuses on educating, protecting, and preserving the history and stories of the Elaine Massacre. In 2022, I'm going back to 1919 now, and in 2022, Lisa began a year-long fellowship as an artist at work, a fellow for the Office Performing Arts Plus film, which has afforded her the opportunity to focus on community building, collaborations, writing her grandmother's stories, poetry, and educational exhibits in hopes of inspiring the descendants to share family stories and histories that inspire bridge building. On December 6, 2022, in a runoff election against the incumbent, Lisa was elected mayor and made history as the first Black and first elected mayor, female mayor of Elaine, Arkansas. Lisa was sworn in on January 1st, 2023, and began serving a 4-year term with a focus on addressing economic and social disparities, inspiring new leaders, and healing and building a more thriving Elaine community. Powerful, very, very powerful. We now have Charlotte Hill O'Neill, otherwise known as Mama C. Mama C, matriarch, artist, priest, peace builder, co-founder of the UAACC in Tanzania. Charlotte Hill O'Neill, Mama C, as we're calling her, is the great niece of the Robert L. Hill, who was the founder of the Progressive Farmer and Household Union of America, the organizing union that the Elaine sharecroppers belonged to. Mama C, thank you so much for being here. We have Jim Anderson, James Anderson Jr., veteran and son of the Elaine Massacre survivor. His father, James Anderson Sr., is pictured on the cover of the Elaine Race Riot by Ida B. Wells, who I've talked about it. I'm so sorry, I can't pull this up so that you'll be able to see this book, but you just have to get a copy of your own. This picture is also the picture used on the event's flyer. We thank Jim Anderson Jr. for being here. And then related to him by, I think they are cousins, is Bobby Anderson. Bobby Anderson Jr. is a descendant of the Elaine Massacre of 1919 and founder and Chief Executive Officer of Anderson Partners Health Systems, and Bebo Scruggs. He'll correct me if I'm not correct. Is it Bebo, Bobby? Okay, he's shaking his head, saying yes. Bobby brings a solid background in public administration, setting policies by merging artificial intelligence in healthcare, and currently serves as the Associate Director of JWell at MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Most recently, Mr. Anderson spoke at the Arab Health Conference in Dubai and their inaugural mental health session on the Black experience in America, where he presented on the Elaine Massacre and experienced the ascension of the book, The Arkansas Race Riot, written by Ida B. Wells Barnett in the Massachusetts Historical Society. And I know Bobby, a wonderful colleague and professional. We knew each other through the work that I'm doing at Curry College, and he has gone on to MIT. But that's the distinguished panel that we have today. And I think what I want to do is I want to bring up Mayor Hicks first. I'll call your name out, and we'll have her first to give her presentation. I'm going to now stop the sharing of the screen so that we can have this. And we have a national audience. We have people from around the country who are here. I have some of my church members who are here as well. So very grateful that they have come, and others. So Mayor Hicks Gilbert, take it away and give us a sense of what we should know as a result of this experience. And you can take yourself off mute.
Hi, thank you, Ms. Carole. Yes, I want to spend just a couple of minutes talking about, and I think the question a lot of us are going to answer is how we're connected to the Elaine Massacre. First of all, I learned about the Elaine Massacre 15 years ago. So I've not known about it, even though I was born and raised here in Elaine. My family's been here since 1916. I did not know about the Elaine Massacre while growing up. And again, only learning about it 15 years ago. And once learned about it, spent time focusing on just absorbing this surreal knowledge and information, and having been kept silent about it for so many years, for generations. My grandparents, and then once I learned the stories from my grandmother, was bound by silence by her until she passed in 2019. And at that time in 2020 is when I founded Descendants of the Elaine Massacre of 1919, again, more commonly known as Dawn 1919, and have embarked on this journey of first educating about the Elaine Massacre and helping people understand that it's not just African-American history, this is American history. It was a time in our country when not just in Elaine, but in communities and cities across this country, there was racial violence, and that a lot of that history is still unknown. And for Elaine, and for this journey I'm on as a descendant of two of the Elaine 12, and related to so many of the others here, it's important that people realize that there's about, of all of the names that you see and you'll learn as you're reading, 80% of the names you run across of the victims and survivors, you'll find 80% of those names of people who still live here in Elaine. So we are still a large community of descendants here in Elaine. And of course, as I continue this work, I'm discovering more and more across this country. So those are some of the things I would like for you to know just about the history of the Elaine Massacre. And more importantly, Dawn 1919 is Descendant founded, Descendant led, and our work is 100% led and done by descendants of the Elaine Massacre.
Wow, I'd like to start asking questions now, but I can't. We've got to move on. There's so much to talk about. I'm going to bring Bobby Anderson on now and have him to give his presentation to let us know his perspective on the Elaine Massacre. You can take yourself off mute and begin your presentation. Bobby Anderson Jr.
Thank you, Carole. My journey with with the Descendants of Elaine Massacre started in 2019 when I found out through my uncle that we have a cousin who is one of the panelists named Jim Anderson. And Jim Anderson was a descendant of the Elaine Massacre. I never heard about this tragedy that happened over 100 years ago, and it was a secret. And I started doing research. I called my newly cousin Jim Anderson, and we connected and we talked. And he had a lot of information. I started going on a quest. I bought many books of Ida B. Wells, of her book, and started passing it out to different people. And it ended up me doing a couple speaking engagements about it because no one heard about it. No one knew about this happened in this country. And so I made it, to my purpose to educate people, educate the family, particularly my family, the Andersons, the Knox, the Mitchells, the Sykes, who all grew up in Phillips County and did not know, heard, or some have heard about it, but everything was quiet, everything was silent. And the current generation of my family do not know anything about what happened. And so I made it my determination to educate people, particularly my family, to know about what have happened. And in order for this never to happen again, they must know about the Elaine Massacre. And I have been, like I said, been doing presentations, but I stopped because I want to educate my family, my people first, because so many people heard about Ida B. Wells, but sadly, to be honest, people in my family never heard of Ida B. Wells. And to educate and to our people and learn about this tragedy that happened over 100 years ago. So that is my introduction to the Elaine Massacre and how I found out, and how I found out through, I had a cousin, Jim Anderson, and his wife, Margie, who we all love and adore, and welcome them to the Anderson family. They had the same last name, which is so interesting. And so that is my part of learning about this tragedy that happened over 100 years ago, which was a secret. And also understanding there are some old wounds that need to be healed, and trying to heal those wounds. So it is an honor and a privilege to be given this gift. I can say it's a treasure and a gift to be given to me to share with people on the other side of the world in Dubai. I was afforded to talk about it and to share with people from different other parts of the world. It is an honor and it's a treasure, and I don't take this for granted.
Bobby Anderson Jr., the passion is all in your voice and all that you are doing. And what should be compelling for every American is how important this is to people outside of the country, and that you now are teaching about this to other parts of the Middle East and elsewhere as well. You talked about your cousin, Jim Anderson. I'm going to bring him up next. We want him to give his reflections and his recollection. So Jim, take yourself off mute, and let's go on and bring you up so that you can continue this family story that was begun by your cousin. So let's add you to the spotlight, and we will have you to begin right now. Jim Anderson, just give us maybe about 2 or 3 minutes reflection on your perspective of this race riot, what this meant to you and your family. Jim Anderson, we'll ask you to take yourself off mute first. All right. You're still on mute, so we'll ask you to take yourself off mute. Just go on and do that for us. There you are. Great. Now you can begin talking. Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, I would like to say good afternoon, and especially to my to my cousin Bobby and Miss Lisa Hicks. Over the last couple of years, I have got to know them pretty well. And unlike Lisa, my daddy used to make liquor, and him and his friend be in the woods making liquor, and he be telling these stories. And after a while, I started thinking maybe the old man's lying about stuff. I could look in the book, and I never seen none of this stuff in the book. So I said that he was lying about this here. So in 1918, I'm sorry, yeah, 2019, 2018, I was watching this here documentary by Carole Anderson, and she was talking about this incident. And then I started remembering some of the stories my dad used to tell me. And as I cross-referenced the story my daddy used to tell me why he was making liquor in the woods, then the things started coming clear to me. And matter of fact, I heard Ida B. Wells' name mentioned. My daddy came home from World War I in 1919 and 1918. And he and Ida B. Wells had planned a trip to Arkansas to get the meeting going, that would brief the farmers on how to do their business. And I have the reason to believe now today that she was in town the night of the race ride taking place. And after the race ride was over, the governor of Arkansas got on a train and rode to Elaine, Arkansas, to make sure that Ida B. Wells was safe. I guess that's it. I mean,
I want you to keep going, just because you're telling such an important story, Jim, just about your father, his connection with Ida B. Wells. This is right after World War I. Your father had come home. So tell us more about that experience from your father's perspective.
Now, my daddy was in the army. He was actually a soldier in the army. He wasn't a veteran. He was actually a soldier in the army. And he got caught up in the shooting out in the woods. And that's how the soldier ended up marching him out of the woods. And he had a friend. I have that book. Wrote by Ida B. Wells that you had mentioned about showing.
Yes, that's it. Yes.
Okay, Ida B. Wells wrote this book, and she wrote this book.
Yes.
She was in the church that night when the shooting got started. My daddy and she knew my daddy. Matter of fact, Ida B. Wells taught my daddy how to read. And she knew my daddy so well that she suggested that night that they let him be part of security. And he was hiding out in the woods. When the people attacked the church. And he said that it was 3 cars pulled up down the road, cut the lights off, and they got out and walked up to the church. The one guy called Atkins, I think his name was Atkins. The guy named Atkins shot the first shot. Then the guy next to Atkins stood up and shot the second shot. My daddy fired the third shot, and he cut I heard him tell a friend about this story. He said he saw the bastard hit the ground in 2 pieces. So he was there. But he died, and he lived until 1972. He just came home from World War I, and the army messed his records up so bad he died on welfare in 1972.
What was your father's name, Jim?
His name was James Blaine Anderson Senior.
Okay. And this is Mrs. This is your better half sitting next to you.
This is the only one I ever had.
Amen. Amen. You tell a story like your father told story. It was like we were in the woods with your dad, hearing these cars drive up, and the first shot, the second shot, and then your father shooting the third shot.
Now, my daddy was inside the church. I guess he was playing the double role. He was inside the church when they turned off the main road.
Okay.
And somebody from the outside came to the back door of the church, and my daddy went out. And shortly after then, the shooting got started.
That's the sequence of events. He was in the church, and then he left the church.
Right, he left the church, and he said one of the guy he shot, the first guy he shot, well now but the next morning, although it ended that night about 12 o'clock, but he said about 6 o'clock the next morning, it was over 1,000 Ku Klux Klan surrounding them woods.
Hmm.
And matter of fact, at first they started trying to rush the woods, and four more. He had killed one, and 4 more got killed. 4 or 5 more, I can't remember.
Right.
But now, Miss Carole, as I look at the things now, this why the relation in this country is so bad today, because it was a lie told then, and this lie never was straightened out.
And we're going to talk about that during our second half too. I appreciate you setting the story, the stage for what you heard from your father, who was there.
Yes, ma'am.
In terms of what was taking place. Thank you so much, Jim Anderson. We're going to come back to you in a little bit. I appreciate your comments. I want to move on and probably bring in Ivor Walker. Going to bring you in next and have you to give your reflections. Let me add you to the spotlight. Jim, we'll get back to you in a little bit. You have me going now. I want to hear more. Absolutely. Yeah.
Like I said, I got a book coming out probably about the latter part of November, first part of December.
Excellent.
They stole my future by hiding my past.
I will be one of the buyers of many of those books. Yes. Thank you so much, Jim. We'll get back to you in a little bit. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right. All right. Ivor, hello.
Hello. Thank you, Carole. I am delighted to represent Sheila Walker, whom I met in 1969. So my connection to Elaine started in 1970. Sheila has 4 relatives who were involved and also was in the church as Mr. Anderson described. When the shooting started, her great-grandmother, 2 great-uncles, and her grandmother were all involved. And so I listened to a lot of descriptions that Sheila had gotten from her grandmother, what little she could get from her grandmother, who was so traumatized by what she experienced during that conflagration. I told a story 2 weeks ago about in 1973 when we bought our first car, living in the Bronx, New York, and wanted to go out for a ride just to check out the new car. And my wife Sheila wanted to go to Hot Springs, Arkansas, to visit her grandmother, who was one of the 4 members involved. And so instead of getting a couple of laps around the block, we ended up driving 20 hours to Hot Springs, Arkansas, for her to visit her grandmother. She was so devoted to her grandmother and was so impacted by the fact that her grandmother, whose name was Annie, could never finish telling the story about what they all went through during this episode. And so for many years, Sheila had struggled and was so determined to find out as much as she could about what happened and what caused all of this trauma in her family. And started doing her research and found books. The first book was Blood in Their Eyes by Griff Stockley. The icing on the cake was the book by Robert Whitaker called On the Laps of God. And Robert Whitaker introduced Sheila to J. Chester Johnson, whose book, Damaged Heritage, we all are familiar with. And as the saying goes, there was no stopping her and them in their quest to make public and to make this more known. As everybody else has said, nobody knew about the Elaine Massacre prior to this, because it was always, don't talk about it. Shh, this is a big secret. Don't say anything. And so it was her goal and her quest to do as much as she could to make this publicized, to get this publicized. So I am positive that she would be pleased. She would be more than pleased to have been present here today, right now, to give her side of the story, to give her feelings about what she wanted to have made known, and I'm delighted to be here, and I thank Mayor Hicks for inviting me to stand in and represent Sheila. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Again, I have many questions to ask you too. I can imagine what that drive was like all those years ago. What year was that, Ivor?
1973. We drove.
Oh.
We drove from the Bronx to Hot Springs, Arkansas.
20 hours, and during that time, it was civil rights time period. So you probably drove as straight as you could, because at that time, were you kind of restricted in terms of where you could stop?
No, not necessarily.
Not in the 70s. Yeah.
We didn't run into it. Nothing that I can remember anyway.
Yeah. Well, 20 years earlier, you would have had to be very restricted where you stopped. Yes.
Sure.
Very much so. Well, we will talk to you more. I'm not sure if your son has joined us, so when I'm going to put you on mute again and have you to give him a ring to see if he's going to be able to join us. I know that he's in another program right now.
All right. Very good.
Right. Thank you so much. I'm going to continue this conversation. I want to bring up Mama C. I can't wait to hear what she is going to say. Mama C, I hope you're ready. You can unmute yourself. Let me go find you here. And we want you to give us your perspective. We're going to add you now and ask you to please address our audience. This is Charlotte O'Neill, otherwise known as Mama C, and she's currently in Washington, D.C. Mama C, take it away.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Special shout out to Sister Mayor Lisa Hicks Gilbert. I'm on tour. I've been living in Tanzania, East Africa, with my husband of 54 years since 1972, in Africa since 1970. And we are both Black Panther Party veterans. So, about the Elaine Massacre and all these tragedies that have happened in America and people just don't know about it. I just found out about this, I think, a couple of years ago. But when I was a little girl, there would be whispered conversations about some of our ancestors, And I thought that it was about my grandfather, Lee Dove Hill, and his brother, John, who had actually escaped from Alabama. They were accused of killing a white man. But come to find out, when my cousin was doing her class project on the Elaine Massacre, and she saw this photo, and that photo looked like my dad, Sterling Emmanuel Hill, looked like his twin, And so she started finding out more about this, and come to find out, that picture that looked like my father's twin was Robert Lee Hill, who you've already mentioned was the founder of the Progressive Farmers and Household Union of America. So when the shooting started in the church, and because the white community, they knew he had organized a lot of sharecroppers, and they were upset about that. He got blamed for one of the whites who got killed. There were people in the community who helped him escape to Kansas City, which is where my dad was born, which is where my grandfather had built our family homestead. And then he escaped to Topeka, Kansas, where he was indicted and found guilty for 122 indictments. Some of these indictments were he was charged of being guilty within 2 minutes. And then he went underground. He went underground. There was a judge who refused, and this is really something that back in the day, a judge actually refused to send him back to Arkansas because they knew he wouldn't get a fair trial. So that just blew my mind, because when I look at my husband's history and my own history and the fact that we're modern day Maroons, I say, hey, that is the blood that I carry. That blood that thirsts for freedom, y'all. That blood that has community service in our hearts. And that's why I made that film. And I'm learning more and more just listening to you all's conversation. And I am going to research that history. It can't be buried. It cannot be buried. And it's we who are knowers who will bring it to the fore. And Sister Lisa, Mayor Lisa, I give thanks that we are connected with this history, and I give thanks for all of y'all. And I'm gonna put my email in the chat so we can be in conversations. I give thanks.
Amen, amen, amen. We actually have put the link to, I believe, the other video that you are referencing. That link has been put in the chat. We're going to ask Mayor Gilbert to put it in the chat a little while longer in case we have others who are going to join us today. I have to again ask you just one quick question, because you got me going. Former member of the Black Panther Party, what took you to now? Two quick questions. Is, from your point of view, is it Tanzania or is it Tanzania?
It's Tanzania. That's the correct pronunciation.
Tanzania. Okay. All right. The reason why I'm asking is I'm not sure where you are in Tanzania, but later on I will reach out to you. We have members of Bethel AME Church who are here on the line. Our pastor's daughter teaches in Tanzania, and she's been there now for about 3 or 4 years. She was in Congo before, so she's been in Africa for about 8 or 9 years now. So I'll contact you offline. I'd love, if there's an opportunity for the two of you to get together. I think there'll be a powerful team with Adia White Hammond and Mama C getting together. So that's how small the Black world is and the Black community is. We're going to get back to you in a little bit with more conversation, Mama C. Thank you so much. I want to bring up, first I wanted to ask, Ivor, is your son going to be able to join us? I know that he's tied up with another commitment right now. You can take yourself off mute and let me know.
Yes, I just called to check, and he has arrived, so he should be coming on momentarily.
Excellent. Very, very good. Well, that's a good pivot point. I'm into this conversation too. This is quite remarkable, and I'm very glad that we are recording this. I want to bring J. Chester Johnson on now, and he is going to give his remarkable conversation about this experience. He is a writer and a poet living in New York. I'm going to add him to the spotlight. And Chester, take it away. You can take yourself off mute, and let's hear your perspective. Oh, you're still on mute.
There we go.
Yeah. Great.
Good. Thank you very much, Carol. At the outset, I'd like to thank you, Lisa, for this event and also for all that you do. Just enormously constructive and generous. I also want to thank you, Carol, for the panel. We've already learned a great deal, and I appreciate your facilitating it. I grew up in Arkansas, in Monticello, Drew County, one county removed from Phillips County. When I was barely a teenager, my mother told me a few times that my maternal grandfather, who was my primary caretaker during the first 5 years of my life, had participated in, as she put it, a well-known race riot where lots of blacks were killed. At the time of the Elaine Race Massacre, my grandfather and his family, including my mother, lived in McGee, DeShay County, which most of you folks will know is directly south of Phillips County, site of the massacre. And he worked for the Missouri Pacific Railroad, which contributed measurably to the horrors of the Elaine Massacre. As Carole mentioned earlier, in 2008, I was asked by the National Episcopal Church to write the litany of offense and apology when the church formally apologized for its role in slavery and related evils. As I conducted my research, I discovered this book, this treatise, written on the massacre by the well-known Black writer and historian Ida B. Wells. Over the next several years, I spent time researching the event and concluded, based on this research, that my grandfather had, in fact, participated. In 2014, I met Sheila Walker, a descendant of the victims, as you know. Her great uncles were shot several times during the white attacks and left for dead, but survived. I met her through Robert Whitaker, who had written an extraordinary book about the Elaine Massacre. Sheila and I became very close and committed ourselves to racial reconciliation. The two of us, she, a descendant of victims, and I, grandson of one of the perpetrators. This relationship with Sheila turned into one of the most meaningful of my life. Indeed, as Ivor and Marcus can attest, our spouses and children also became parties to this racial healing. Sheila died in 2021 after a long-term bout with cancer. At the request of her family, I gave the eulogy at her memorial service. I believe her remaining family and I, along with my wife, are still very close. Finally, in 2020, I wrote a book entitled Damaged Heritage about certain personal aspects of the massacre, with the foreword being written by Sheila Walker. I've given more than 80 presentations on this book, some with Sheila, discussing the Elaine Massacre and my own personal connection with it, including the racial healing relationship that I shared with Sheila. And I just thank you very much for allowing me to describe this connection with the Elaine Race Massacre.
Again, I have many questions to ask you, and my thoughts automatically are going to 2019 for this reason. Juanita Abernathy was a very good friend of mine. She was like a sister mom, a friend, sometimes a confidant, and she was the wife of Reverend Ralph David Abernathy, the closest associate to Dr. King. I sat on the same row as Peggy Wallace when Juanita died, and I was asked to speak at her funeral, which I did. In front of me was John Lewis. Andrew Young was next to him, and here Peggy Wallace was on the end of the row. Peggy was in a parallel position as you are at Chester, because her father, George Wallace, was governor, obviously, of Alabama at very crucial times, and was a segregationist, ultimately reforming his beliefs and his opinions later on in life. But Peggy is now committed to racial reconciliation, as she has been for a number of years. And she and the Abernathy children have formed a strategic alliance, a very close friendship, very much like you and Sister Walker, who has passed away, and we know that Ivor is here on representing her. So there are circles of love and reconciliation that are needed in this country, and you certainly bear that out. We will talk more to you in a little bit, but I thank you so very much. And we're now going to bring on Marcus Wallace, who is here. Again, I could just ask lots of questions, but we want to move this program along. Going to bring Marcus on. Marcus, thank you so very much. And Chester, we will talk to you shortly. Thank you. Marcus, welcome. We're just asking for brief remarks now. I know that you had another commitment, and we're glad that you're with us. We would love to get your perspective on this whole conversation about the Elaine Massacre. Marcus Wallace. Marcus Walker. And you're good. You can take yourself off mute also. Oh, almost. Let's see. I'm going to ask you to unmute, which I've done. That's fine.
Okay.
You're good.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
I think when I was getting a message that's saying that the host wouldn't let me unmute. So I think maybe you might have a setting, but that's okay. Well, I'm on. It's all good. And I'm sorry I'm late, and glad to see so many people on. We have what we call Porch Fest here in Rosendale, and I was playing some music with the band that I'm in. Glad to be here. Sadly, I didn't hear the beginning part of the conversation. I know we were obviously talking about Descendants of Elaine. I don't know if there's a specific place you want me to start, or there's a specific question that you would like me to address.
Well, we're going to have a conversation a little later on during our second half. So right now, we just want you to give your perspective on I'm assuming your mom and the relationship with Elaine, Arkansas, and what it means to you. And then we'll get back during the second half with our discussion.
Yeah, definitely. You know, my mother was unique in the fact that she it didn't matter who the other person was. Like she always was kind of open, very, very open to other people. You know, even open to complete strangers. You know, it's basically you have to kind of prove yourself to be untrustworthy before my mom is not going to speak to you. So I was not the least bit surprised when after she found out, I forget exactly what year, in the early 2000s, you know, more details about our family being involved in this massacre. She was all over it. I mean, just I think she got a hold of Griff Stocky's book first, Blood in Their Eyes, and then eventually she got to Robert Whitaker's book, On the Lapse of Gods. And in typical fashion, she was just, you know, relentless. He was just not going to read the book and put it down and say, oh, okay. Got in touch with Robert Whitaker, the author, and he was pleasantly surprised because he had been searching for Descendants and had not really found any. And so she was the first. He told her about Chester. And again, not surprised, because that's just how my mom was. She wanted to meet him, you know, and I believe she called him and they had a pretty long phone conversation. Then they eventually met, you know, ironically at my house when my wife, you know, at that point had decided she was going to try to make a film about all of this. And my mother, and yeah, I mean, they met, and it was an amazing meeting. I think in the video we'll probably see some of that. You know, that's not a recreation. You actually see, you know, what it was like when they first met, and yeah, but I really appreciated you know, how Chester was also, because, you know, it could not have been easy for him either to. And I think that's the so much is the root of the problem we have in this country. You know, I often say that racism is not necessarily a problem that people of color have, but it's more so a problem that white people have. And to be able to face, to stand up and say, okay, you know, we were part of this. You know, that's something that more people need to be willing to do, for sure. And you know, at the same time, I do appreciate my mother's willingness to be open and to listen. So yeah, that's kind of what my perspective is on it for now.
Great. That's a great segue. Thank you so much, Marcus. I have so much to ask and so many questions to ask. But before we do that, we're going to take a little pause just to give you a chance to get a drink of water, just to just catch your breath, because we've done a lot of talking. Marcus, thank you so much. I'm in Lakeville, Massachusetts. You're in Roslindale. So we're not that far away from each other. Bobby Anderson is also here as well. So we've got Massachusetts well covered, definitely well covered. But we want to take a brief break, and we'd like for everyone just to, you can stand up and stretch and come back in 2 minutes. So you're going to see a video, just a slide and some music that's going to play just for a short while. And then we'll be able to come back and continue our conversation. So without further ado, let me just pop it up here and turn the music on, the volume on. And we would love to get your questions. You can put them in the chat. We want to have a great conversation when we get back. So just stand by, stay tuned, and we will have a chance to continue this rich dialogue and this rich conversation in just a few minutes. Welcome back. I want to make sure everybody is able to hear. I think Mama C may have been having some audio issues. If you have any problems, just go on and put the information in the chat. You can direct it to me, and hopefully we'll be able to get you on board so that you'll be able to hear this rich conversation. We're going to move on now and move forward and play a 9-minute trailer to this remarkable documentary about the Elaine Massacre that is in production. The producers are the Reverend Dr. Chris Jones and his beautiful wife, Dr. Jones, as well. So the video will speak for itself, and then we're going to have a conversation with our remarkable 7 panelists who are here with us. Stay tuned.
Oh, I'm pretty anxious here. Nervous, a little nervous. I'm usually not nervous, but I am. So, just waiting. Excited. You know, I can imagine what Chester must be feeling, you know. Both of us on opposite sides of this whole thing, this massacre. I've been thinking about him all week, and I know that he probably is, you know, his feelings, he says his feelings are conflicted, and I know they are. Oh, here they go. All right. Welcome.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Oh, I'm fine. Oh, I'm so glad this moment is happening.
Me too.
And there it is. This right here is Sheila's superpower.
I would kiss you, but I'll put lipstick on me.
She can connect with others like no one else, and no matter how far apart they may be.
Nice seeing you too.
She immediately, there wasn't any question. Even if I hadn't wanted to, she had embraced me, and we embraced for a very long time. And it said so much. It said, yes, your grandfather may have participated in this massacre, but that doesn't matter in my relationship with you.
Okay, it's so good to see you. Oh my God. This is Annie. This is my grandmother.
And she was there.
She was there. Actually, I took this when she tried to tell us about
But
the
she was
Elaine. Yeah,
suffering
she
from
was
a,
just
post-traumatic
stress syndrome for
Right.
so many years, and she died with that. I never got her part of the story. I never got any details of it all from her. As a small child, I had heard that I had an uncle that was going to go to the electric chair. It was like as though people were speaking in shame, you know, whispers.
When my father died and my mother wasn't doing particularly well, Lonnie took me in until I was 4 or 5. He was a very loving grandfather, but then to think of him in terms of his role in this terrible event, and also as an avowed member of the KKK. And I can't reconcile the two. It's really not possible.
It's not.
It's not possible. That if you don't unmask the demons, you're not freeing the next generation of those demons.
That idea of unmasking demons from the past was strangely resonating with me. And I could sense that for Sheila, it was about to set off a spark.
You know what's interesting? Your great-grandmother's house was a meeting point. On the day that, that the posses are coming down, a lot of people met at your great-grandmother's house. So somehow she was quite central to all of this.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you know where the house was?
Yeah, I know exactly where the house was.
Is it one of those two off of 44?
Yeah, where's the map? Here's the church.
Right.
And she's on this road. And what happens is when the posses come down, they come down here and they head off this way. Right. And a bunch of them are gathered at this point at her house, actually. Anyway, you can see where your grandmother's house was, great-grandmother's house.
Yep. Right there. Wow.
Yeah.
Sheila was born in Hot Springs and moved to Chicago at 5. There's no family left in Phillips County, and she's never been.
I thought about going down to Elaine just to see.
It's mysterious in some way. Hoop Spur as a place designated by signs or has been completely evaporated. There's nothing there that would suggest that there used to be a place called Hoop Spur. Nothing.
It didn't surprise me at all when she said that, yeah, I'm going down. Do you want to come with me? See the places and meet some other descendants or just other people who still live in Elaine that care about continuing this conversation or renewing it. She was driven to reconcile wherever she could. That's my mom, yeah.
Something is driving me to say, this needs to be out. This needs to be out in the world. And if it's just one person at a time, that's what I'll do.
I decided to join Sheila's journey. And of course I'd bring the camera.
This is the actual area where the massacre ensued or began.
It is kind of eerie. There's an eerie feeling about this whole road, and I would hate to be here on this road in the dark.
My mother asked me to come down to Arkansas with her. She was born in Arkansas and maybe had gone back a few times. This is the first time she had come for that purpose. You know, like just get to try to take it in, you know, being on that soil where this massacre took place.
I think that's the saddest part about it.
This was also Sheila's first big trip since being diagnosed with stage 4 cancer.
How could something of this proportion happen and nobody really knows anything?
Right.
That's what Sheila was ready to change, with the time and energy she had left.
Thanks for tuning in to Mid-Morning Conversation. We're here with Sheila Walker and Francisca Bloom talking about the Elaine Massacre. Something extremely egregious and ugly and historically bad that looms over us like a curse. What do you say to people who say, just let it lie, leave it alone? Sheila?
Well, you know, I think that the only way to heal from a wound is to talk about it, grieve about it, let your feelings, let your emotions out. Otherwise, you kind of internalize what has happened, and you can never go beyond that.
Sheila was super excited to meet another descendant of victims.
Hey, how you doing? Good to meet you.
Welcome back home.
God, thank you.
But unlike Sheila's ancestors, his were business owners and a dentist, part of a small independent black middle class in Helena. And not at all involved with the sharecroppers' effort to unionize. They were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time.
My great uncle and his 3 brothers were on a hunting trip. And apparently they were down coming out of the woods, and some of the white people who were down involved in the riot see 4 black men coming out of the woods with shotguns and just mowed them down. They just left them out there on the side of the road in like a little ditch.
What happened in 1919 to Brian's uncles and countless other victims has been hushed up and is hanging over the county like a curse. But there's change in the air.
We're trying to, where do you think this is actually going to go?
It's going to be right here. What's going to happen is here's as I understand it. It's going to, it's going to be a square shape.
Breaking the silence with a memorial smack in the center of Helena will probably not rub everyone the right way.
If I am somebody who it's been determined that my granddaddy or great-granddaddy or great-uncle might have killed a bunch of people or caused a bunch of people to be killed, I think that's very difficult to deal with. And I think it's very hard to raise your hand and say, yeah, my granddaddy was involved in that.
Ooh, I'm trying to take it all in, as I'm sure you are also. Well, we're going to begin this discussion, this conversation about what happened back in 1919 and how it relates today and how it will relate in the future. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen right now and begin this conversation one by one. Let me bring on our illustrious panelists and speakers who you've heard from, but now we're going to hear them as a group. So we're going to do that now. Just give me a second. I'm going to bring on Chester Johnson. Jim Anderson, you're next. We're going to bring you on. All right. And Marcus, we're going to bring you on next. And Bobby Anderson, you are on. Ivor, bringing you on. All right. And Mayor Gilbert, absolutely bringing you on. Let's see if, you have to come on camera, Mayor Gilbert, and then we will spotlight you as well. So I'd like for all of my speakers to come on camera, turn your cameras on. Obviously, our guests, you can just sit back and relax, but we'll bring all of our guest speakers on so that they can participate in this very important conversation. Let me add you to the conversation. Mama C, I know that you have to leave shortly, so I'm probably going to lead off with you, asking you to answer our questions. I believe I have everybody. Have I missed anybody spotlighting them? Bobby, I'm going to ask you to count and make sure that we have all of our important speakers who are here, along with our audience members who are listening in the background. Okay, I think we're all here. Excellent. I have some remarks to make, but I want to bring Mama C on, and I'd love for you to start the conversation off because you're looking at it from a historical point of view, but also from a global point of view since you live in Tanzania. So Mama C, to talk to us about what the film means to you, what your experience means, and obviously your descendants.
Yes, that film, I can't wait to see all of it. This has really wet my whistle to delve more into this history. You know, something that it seems we all have in common is the fact that our families were so secretive about this, as if we, carry some kind of guilt. But I know it's not that. I know it was a protective mechanism. I know this is why my family would whisper about that. They didn't want us to be exposed to what my uncle Robert had been subjected to, and the fact that he was able to escape. I love that because I look at him like a maroon also. So I like to tell everybody, the importance of informing our children of this history, in all of our history, and not just our children, but this has to be taught in the classrooms in America. I know what I've seen on the news, they're banning books now, banning films now. So even if we have to get together in our communities, in our churches, in our temples, and teach this history, I urge us to do that.
Mm-hmm. What's the impact? Tell us what you're doing in Tanzania. Tell us the impact of your history as a member of the Black Panther Party. You leaving the States in the 1970s. Give us the context for that, Mama C.
Yes, and my husband, Brother Pete O'Neill, he was one of the leaders. He was the founder of the Kansas City chapter of the Black Panther Party, and he was one of the leaders who was targeted by COINTELPRO. Which was instituted by J. Edgar Hoover, who was head of the FBI. So he was found guilty on some charges that he didn't do, and was threatened, like all the leaders, like all the Panthers, with death and everything else. So when we left, we thought we were coming back in 2 years. It was 20 years before I came back, and he still can't because there's no statute of limitations in carrying a gun across state lines in Kansas City. But we, after homesteading for many, many years, we were urged by elders in the community there, in the village that we live in Mbasani Village, to start teaching the young people some of the skills that we have. And that's how the United African Alliance Community Center was born. And we have free classes for youth in our community. Brother Pete founded the Leaders of Tomorrow Children's Home. It's a refuge for people who come from the States and all around the world. We hold study abroad, groups and all kind of people. And like I was saying in the beginning, I urge all of y'all to come there. This is a legacy that isn't just the legacy of Pete and Charlotte O'Neill. This is a legacy that we all can be proud of and be a part of. And my thing is spreading peace and love and joy. Even with all these tragedies going on, y'all, continuing tragedies, we have to make sure that we still have joy, because that's what charges our batteries, and that's what helps to build unity. Yes, that's the short of it.
Wow. Moment of privilege. If everybody would look in their camera, all of our speakers, now that we have all of our panelists here, I do want to take a photo of everyone. So if you just look in your camera, panelists, and we'll do a countdown, 3, 2, 1 countdown. Look right into your camera, sit up straight and tall, and we will do a 3, 2, 1 countdown. Here we are. That's wonderful. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. And one more, 3, 2, 1. Excellent. Thank you so much. Mama C, thank you so much. I know that you've got a dash on, but thank you for being here with us. Appreciate you.
Thank all of y'all. Much love and many blessings.
And your movie, your trailer is also in the chat and other information as well. I'll be reaching in touch with you because of the proximity of Adia White Hammond, who also lives in Tanzania. Right. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Panelists, other panelists, take it away in terms of your thoughts about the video, where we were, where we are. And I see that all of you got involved in this at different stages based on hearing about it, not knowing about it, and then wanting to know more. Anybody can kick it off in terms of your thoughts and your reflections. Yes, Ivor, yes.
This is the first time that I've seen this video, and it was somewhat hard to watch, and very thankful to see it, but still very, very, very hard to watch. So again, my thoughts go out to Francisca, my daughter-in-law, and her unflinching efforts to make this video over these past years. I'll say years. As Sheila said, even if it's one person at a time is better than none. And I'll also echo what Mama C said about what's going on these days with, the attempted suppression of this news of having people know about what has gone on. It's very dangerous, and I hope that we are all paying attention, especially white folks, paying attention to how delicate a situation we're in. It is very important that we get this everything straightened out as best we can, and it's not going to be easy. But as Mama C also said, we need to interject our joy and energy into all of these efforts that we have to make.
Yeah, thanks. So true, so true. Francisca, I know that you're off camera. If it's possible for you to come on camera, thank you. I want to bring you in the conversation because you are the filmmaker. I think that would be appropriate to do that. So I'm going to make you co-host so that we can have your sound there. We're going to add you to the spotlight. There we are. Thank you so much. Another photo. We're going to do one more photo with you there. We'll do a 3, 2, 1 count. Here we are. 3, 2, 1. And one more, 3, 2, 1. This will be archival going forward. 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much. All right, thank you. We're going to add you in and get your comments in just a little bit. Jim, when you watch that movie, when you watch the video clip, and when you think about this and think about your father's stories, take yourself off mute and give me a sense of what's going through your head now. We'll make sure that you get off. So glad that Mrs. Anderson is standing nearby. There you are. Excellent. Yeah. All right, great. So talk to us about what your thoughts are.
I done lost the whole thing now.
Oh no, we can see you and we can hear you.
Okay.
We can. All right.
My thoughts is kind of somewhat like, as they were, because like with my daddy's help, I was able to learn a lot about this here. Although I didn't believe what he was telling me, because I couldn't believe no one person could do it, somebody else this way. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But then as I journeyed through real life after I left home, I understood the meanness of people. And it kind of left us in the dark, kind of left people of color in the dark, because like we not, you can tell any story you want about us, and we're not at liberty to call you a lie. You know, mm-hmm. So this here kind of put some clarity to some of my thoughts.
Clarity. That's powerful. That's important. Very important. Who'd like to jump in and give your comments about the film? Francisco, we'll get you in a minute about your thoughts about what Lisa has started, Mayor Lisa Hicks Gilbert, in terms of this organization. Give me your thoughts and your comments.
Okay. Well, in relations to the film, let me say this about Ms. Sheila. I met Ms. Sheila in 2019 right after the 100-year anniversary of the Elaine Massacre, and we were meeting as they were putting the Elaine 12, and someone might have to correct me. It's on the Arkansas National Heritage Trail down at downtown Little Rock. Not Heritage Trail, on the walk downtown in Little Rock. And we had a lot of the descendants of the Elaine 12 there, and that's where I met Ms. Sheila for the first time. And I'd heard about this wonderful person with this absolutely contagious spirit, and that's how I remember her. As this person, I can't believe I only knew her just almost 2 years before she left us, and it felt like I'd known her for years. And when I met her in 2019, started Descendants of the Elaine Massacre of 1919 in 2020. And she was one of the first people that I called and asked if she would be a part of this work. And what she said to me, and which her comment helps guide the work that I did. And she said, on one condition, that you include healing and reconciliation in this work that you do. And it has been my privilege to honor her request, and not only just honor her request, that she and her comment was what I need, because I didn't have any direction on what I was doing. All I knew was I wanted to learn as much as I could about what had happened here in this community, and also find as many descendants and connect with them as I possibly could. But again, her request, and that just a testament to the spirit of type of person that she is. I'll say, well, that she is, because she's still with us in so many ways. I just feel her right here with us now. And I'm excited about the film and the hope that it brings. And again, I encourage everyone, anytime that any of us all go out, Descendants, and we speak and we talk about the Elaine Massacre, that in some way in there, we always bring the conversation of healing and reconciliation into the conversation, wherever we are.
Mm-hmm. You know, I think about restorative justice, and the restorative justice movements in this country and elsewhere. We've seen it in South Africa as well. that is an important component. We get fixed and focused for obvious reasons on the event or the situation or the conditions during that time. I mentioned to everybody at the beginning, the Ku Klux Klan, they were at their zenith in the 1920s. So this was a buildup to their strength, and they were tied in legislatively. So I guess I'm going to ask the question, what do you see in terms of, this is open to the panel, what do you see in terms of parallels between 1919 during that time? And here we're talking about Mr. Hill, who was an escape fugitive trying to escape what would have happened to him in Arkansas, and a judge saying, no, I'm not going to have him extradited back to Arkansas because we know what's going to happen to him. So people were found guilty before even going to trial in so many cases. Do you see any parallels now with what has happened in the past? Any panel members can answer that. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would like to weigh in on that.
Go ahead, Jim. Yes.
Because of the lack of knowledge on our white citizen side, they trying to relive that part of the era.
Mm-hmm. Jim, get a little closer to your camera now.
Okay.
Okay.
I think about me not being able to start school until I was 16 years old. So therefore, I was well behind on my education. But through the grace of God, I was able to self-educate and live a whole career and take care of my wife and my 8 kids. But then I think about it now, and I was working against myself because of a whole lot of things I didn't know.
Wow. Thank you for that. Thank you. Very powerful. Any other comments? Marcus?
I might make a couple. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead, Chester. Yes.
A couple of comments. There are a couple of efforts that go on presently that we should recognize and apply to, that was applied in the past and being applied now. And it is a matter of silence of the truth and distortions or outright fabrications of the truth. Soon after the massacre, the county sheriff sent out a note primarily to the Black community throughout Phillips County, telling everyone to be quiet. Just get back to work. Don't talk about it. I mean, one of the things going on is that it was the massacre occurred at the time of the cotton harvest. And there was fear that the the Black community would, because there were a lot of Blacks at that time that exited the county. And there was a fear there wouldn't be enough to. So the county sheriff then issues this statement telling all the sharecroppers, the Black sharecroppers, to be quiet, not to talk about this. And then on the second issue, the misleading statements, there was a white narrative that occurred within Phillips County that stayed in place for a majority of the time, up until like 1980 or so, that it was debunked. And the white narrative was proven to be false. And the white narrative was that there were like 15 to 20 Blacks killed on the morning of October the 1st, the morning following the meeting at the Hoopsburg Church. But that was it. And that the federal troops came to Phillips County to restore order. And that's all they did. They didn't, this was the white narrative, and they did not commit murder as a result. And the fact is that the largest amount of killing occurred through the federal troops with their machine guns. These were troops that had just come back from World War I, and they had the machine guns. There were 500 troops that came to Phillips County to suppress what they had been told was a black insurrection. But it was the troops that inflicted the major killing in Phillips County. But the white narrative was, yes, there were blacks killed on the morning of October the 1st, but that was it. And the troops restored order. And so in the context of silence and misleading truth, of course, those are two dynamics that are driving so much of the MAGA agenda today. Silence, distortion. And so I do think we have to be cognizant of the world we're now living in, where the past is prologue, and it's a scary past.
You draw a very, very important parallel. And I'm thinking of the role that I play. I'm a diversity speaker and consultant, have been doing this work for 36 years, and now I have a podcast that I started very recently called Conversations with Carole. And in September of 2020, when our former president wrote out his signature on the executive order banning diversity training programs within the federal government or federal contractors who had some relationship, I lost business and others lost business because I'm a diversity professional. But I didn't stop there. I was angry at what had happened because it was a violation of the First Amendment rights, first of all, for people to have freedom of expression and how they can talk and speak, and in this case, get educated. And number two, I was alarmed because as I went and talked to some of my colleagues in different parts of the country, alerting them to this executive order, many of them who are diversity professionals either were so comfortable with their own positions that they would have been uncomfortable making any statements. And some said, well, we could just change the language. We can take out the word diversity. I said, you realize what this man is doing? He's stopping your business. And this is a form of censorship. I could not name the corporation that I was working with because I wanted to speak out. And obviously, for a lot of reasons, they were a federal contractor. They didn't want to be connected with that, but they were outraged by what had happened. Some people said, oh, well, he's not going to get reelected, so we don't have to worry about it. The fear, it was like the frog that has been put in cold water in a pot. And then you just turn that heat up. And you see what happens. By that time, it's too late for the frog to jump out because the water he's become comfortable with has lulled him to sleep. That's what's happening now, Chester, and exactly what you're talking about. People don't want to say anything. They don't want to become uncomfortable. And if we're not careful, what we saw in 1919, we see it way too often, can certainly happen again. Bobby Anderson, Bobby, what are your thoughts about this?
Oh, well, I certainly agree with the comments of Jay Chester and you, Carole. And I honestly can see what Mama C said, the whispers. And I can say when I started talking about the Elaine Massacre, one of my cousins who lives in Sacramento, 83-year-old person, last name Sykes, on my grandmother's side, who lived in Arkansas. And he was telling me about, the whispers that, as a young boy, he would, hear the adults talk about what happened during that time. But then when he will come into the house or come, whatever, coming outside from the field, it gets quiet, it's not talked about. And so the comfortable side, I see with so many people is when I told him about during a Black History Month, we did a session. That's when I first met Jay Chester, that at that event. And I told him about it and he got nervous. He said, "You really gonna do this?" I'm like, Well, yes, it needs to be talked about. It needs to be shared. And he was really set against the conversation. And I was sharing with Mayor Hicks about it. And I said, I just find it so surprising that some of the people I don't want to talk about. It's such ingrained in so many people about you got to keep quiet, be silent, don't talk about it. And to talk and to bring it up, I find it's a challenge. Not so much of a challenge with non family members and non people who grew up in Arkansas, just the people who lived in that county or experienced, and everything is quiet. I remember Jim actually came to our reunion about 10 years or so ago, so like 15, 20 years ago. And this is before we knew it was like he was invited, and I guess he connected with my aunt. And so we saw this gentleman there, and, I said, oh, he looks like us, but I never knew who he was, but he was just invited. And he had a meeting with my great uncle who was there, who was still living, that canceled on Jim. He canceled the meeting that Jim had with my great uncle. And surprisingly, that was like, why did he cancel? But now I probably understand why he canceled it, because it was bringing up the past.
Right.
And I believe my great uncle knew about this massacre. And now you have people who got comfortable that once he leave well enough alone. And what Huckabee is doing in Arkansas is very terrible. And what people are also, other politicians are doing and supporting, even also people who are not being quiet behind the scenes, not talking about it. But the key is, and I preach this so many times, you got to go to the ballot. You got to go and vote. And to educate the next generation. I have people in my family who don't vote. Well, they're starting to vote now, but you have to educate. It is important for people to go and vote. Get these people out of office. And I told my cousin, I said, imagine if you voted and so many people voted. You want to be whining and complaining about everything. But we want to whine and be upset. And my question is, did you vote? Well, why you got to bring it up? I said, well, because if you vote these people out, you won't be having these different problems and issues.
So true. So true. I want to kick this back to Marcus and Ivor from a father-son perspective, and then bring the filmmaker in next. Marcus, Ivor, and then is it Franziska? Franziska.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Franziska.
All right, Marcus.
Yes. The first thing I'm struck by, Mr. Anderson, your story, just a lot of respect for your story and what happened. And I see there's a comment about kind of like whose fault that is. This is certainly the fault of white people for sure, the majority. There's no question about that. As an educator, I think you probably heard I'm in my 20th year now as a Boston public school teacher. So your story, Mr. Anderson, you starting at 6th grade, but still, raising 8 kids, that just means a lot. It says a lot for sure. As far as the connections to today, I was just teaching my kids about what's going on in Florida and Ron DeSantis and him basically trying to ban Black history, not accept an AP Black history, having these rules that if any student feels uncomfortable in the class, the teacher has to stop teaching anything having to do with race. Part of what I was showing was, featured the Ocoee massacre. And I even wonder, how many of us on this call know about the Ocoee massacre. I had heard about it, but I had forgotten the details. This was an election day massacre on I believe November 11th in 1920 in Ocoee, Florida. They're not, and it's a very, very, very similar story to the Elaine massacre. Two Black men decided to vote. They were attacked by a posse. Apparently, some gunfire was exchanged and two white men were killed. And then in the papers, it was a riot and an uprising. And I mean, the parallels are just not surprising, but I mean, almost like a script to be followed, you know, to say that Black people were rioting and then end up massacring hundreds. So the theme of silence that comes up, I mean, I think what Huckabee is doing and what DeSantis is doing goes along with that theme of silence. It's basically you have to be silent. If you don't know about it, then it's very easy to be silent. If you don't know, if we're trying to stop the history, then you're not able to talk about it. It's disconcerting, but in teaching my kids, I always tell them, like, you know, you guys, and I really mean it. I was like, you guys have to be the ones to change this, you know. Like, it's, you know, my time, you know, I'm here, I'm doing the best I can, but my time is passing, and it's really up to these young people to get out there and try to make things better. Like the condition that we're in right now, you know, things have just been getting worse. They're continuing to deteriorate, but I remain hopeful, though. Every day that I'm in the classroom, with the energy that I get from my students, that there can be something to look forward to in the future.
So that we cannot be the frog in the cold water that boils us alive, which is what is happening at this point in time. Great point. And Marcus, I'm glad you're in the classroom teaching and educating our students too. And Franziska put the information about the riot that you had referenced. That's also in the chat as well. Ivor, I'm going to toggle back to you as the dad. Your thoughts, your reflections, and obviously it's got to be pretty hard to watch a documentary trailer where you see your wife in living color, alive and vibrant, and doing God's work.
Yes, absolutely. As I said before, I was very proud to and thankful to see that video. But I want to expand a little bit on what Marcus said, and in a personal experience, and that has to do with ignorance and not paying attention. And I have when I came to this country in 1966 from Jamaica. I was 21, knew nothing about racism, even though racism was alive and well in Jamaica, always has been, always will be. But in my ignorance and being misinformed, you know, I'm ashamed to say that when I came here and heard, and I had heard Martin Luther King speak before, and when I came here and heard him speak, I was questioning some of the things that he said in my ignorance. And so I wonder how many people are in that same situation today. And it's probably in the millions, if not hundreds of millions, who have been blinded and are misinformed and misdirected. That, you know, that's the only way that this thing will survive, is if those people, especially the ones that have power to do something but don't. So, you know, there's a lot of work that we have to do. We've come a long way, but there's still a long way to go yet. And I worry for our young children. I've got 3 grandchildren, and I worry about them every day, as everybody in this audience probably does with the young ones that they have. But keep hope alive, as Mr. Jackson has said, Reverend Jackson has said. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your comments. We're going to toggle down and keep it a family affair. But before we talk with our filmmaker, just a quick question, Mayor Gilbert, reparations. You're asked that question a lot. You started a very powerful organization in terms of the descendants of the Elaine Massacre. What does reparations have to do with this conversation, and what are your thoughts about reparations?
Yes, I'm often asked about reparations. Sometimes my comments are not so popular because, and I just, when I said, I answered the question of what does reparations look like? And I prefer to refer to it as restorative justice because I personally, and I'll say this personally, to me, reparations does not look like a big fat check. I'm here to honor our ancestors and the work they started. When I look at the organizing skills that they had. If anyone looks at the their documents that they had, the Progressive Household Farmers Union of America, and their organizing documents and their bylaws that they had a plan. They were getting together $5 shares, putting that money together in order to buy property so that they all could possibly have their own Black Wall Street.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to realize that in 1919, Wall Street, in Tulsa was in full swing. There was a vibrant community. And I believe that they knew about the other Black thriving communities, and that's what they wanted for themselves. And that's why they decided to fight for a fair share of the profits, a fair accounting of their store charges at the plantation stores, and looking at their bylaws and them putting together $5 buying shares to purchase land. And for me, reparations, again, it does not look like a big fat check. I believe more in restorative justice, and that looks like tangible things that help build this community back up. Here in Elaine, there is not one street, not one building, there's nothing here named after a person of color here in Elaine after 104 years. We still have not honored them here in this community in any way, shape, form, or fashion. We have not done our due diligence to the victims nor the survivors of the Elaine Massacre. So for me, doing this work means putting a marker on. They have recently built a bike trail over the railroad track that brought in the 500 soldiers. It has now become the Arkansas Delta Heritage Bike Trail. And I'm hoping our work begins. We just had a remembrance ride, rode from Elaine to Hoopsburg last Saturday to select the location, and in efforts to write a letter to the Arkansas Delta Heritage Trail in hopes of this time next year, we're all here together celebrating a new marker, a new bench with the names of the Elaine 12, of the names of those lost in the church, and honoring them in those ways. And also naming streets, naming buildings, naming a museum after them in that way. But restorative justice type efforts that honor and also help to bring economic development and justice here to the descendants right here on the ground. So that's what reparations looks like to me. Reparations looks like the work we put into bringing here what our ancestors started. They left the blueprint for us. And so that's when I think about reparation, it is just putting the work in and honor them in ways that is long lasting and that stems not from this generation, but generations after us.
It's interesting that you'd say that. We could have a whole nother hour about all these parallel movements that went on around that time. The farmers getting together, wanting their just due economically. And Francisca, we're going to bring you in right now. And also, I just looked up Marcus Garvey. from Jamaica, Brother Walker, and his movement, his Universal Negro Improvement Association that took place around the same time period, 1914, the 20s, etc. You had the NAACP that had started, the Niagara movement grew out of the NAACP grew out of the Niagara movement in 1909. So you had all of these movements taking place, but the brutality that forced so many of them to suffer inconsequential loss that took place because of the silence that was enforced in so many ways. Francisca, tell us about the film. Take yourself off mute. We're stunned by what you've done and challenged and encouraged all at the same time.
Thank you. Oh, can you mute yourself?
We have a husband and wife.
A quick shout out
yes.
to my partner in this, Lou Smith. He's been in this journey with me for the past almost 10 years too. It's been a long haul, but everything that's been said about, you know, the silence and the importance of education, and this is what this film is about. We kind of want to continue Sheila's mission in breaking that silence and, you know, continuing to talk about it and enriching classrooms. That's my hope too. Marcus has already been using some parts of this film in his classroom. So I think education is the key, and we hope that this film can support that. And Lisa, your mission too. It's I wish you good luck with that fight. That's
now. Have you been working on
that
this
same
10
side?
years? Have you been working on this film, this documentary for 10 years?
I'm sorry? Almost 10 years.
Wow. Wow. And
2014 is when we first filmed with Sheila and Chester. So that's when we began.
How did you connect with Chris Jones?
I can't hear anything.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Yeah. I was asking, how did you connect with Chris Jones and his wife?
He contacted me. He found me. He met someone who knew about my film, and they started talking, and he was really interested in this project. And I'm so glad he wanted to come on board and support us. I think that'd be terrific if he can help us spread the word and get this film out into the world and be seen by as many people as possible.
So 10 years now, you've been working on the film. What stage are you at right now in terms of post-production and then ultimately it being debuted, I'm sure, at film festivals around the world?
I hope so. Yeah, we're getting close. We're still in the edit phase, but the shape is there. It'll be an hour long, and we hope to finish it maybe early next year. And then, yes, festivals would be great, but more importantly, screenings, community screenings with discussions. And I'd like to make a version available to get into classrooms, high school, colleges. PBS would be great as well.
Well, if you don't know Lisa Simmons, who is head of the Roxbury Film Festival, I will personally make sure that the two of you connect, because this film needs to start off, since you're in the Boston area, start off with the Roxbury Film Festival and then go to the Martha's Vineyard Film Festival and all of the other festivals around the country. You've done a great job so far, and thank you so much. I'm going to go around very quickly. It's amazing how time has just quickly moved on. We're at the end of our second hour, but in closing, I'd like for each one of you to give us a sense, and also, the transcript is on as well. Thank you for the comments that have been just flowing into the chat room. We appreciate the comments, and you're talking to each other, giving links as well. Thank you very, very much. Love to have in like a sentence or two sentences or less, quickly go around and tell us, where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? Jim Anderson, start us off. Where do we go from here?
Well, I'm glad you called me. I was thinking about that. The United States Army have been barely mentioned in these comments. I read the order that the governor made. The president had. I'm not sure where the governor issued order, but the governor, I thought the president of the United States, he ordered the army to go in and stop the violence, do investigation on what happened, what started all of it, and put it under 100-year seal. Now, 100 years from that was 19 October 1999. Am I right? Well, 2019.
2019.
Okay. But I have been unable to get a copy of that report. And the strange thing about it, the National Guard just had came back from France at that time. They have been deployed to France. Right. And they were all together in Little Rock, Arkansas when this stuff happened. And the National Guard came back to Elaine, Arkansas and investigated their own damage. How did it happen?
More to come. More to come. Jim Anderson, you're very insightful. Thank you for those comments. This is the beginning of the conversation. Definitely not the end.
I hope so.
Marcus Walker, thoughts, comments, 2 sentences or less.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna keep on keeping on in the classroom. Literally, that's where I'm going. I mean, I'm in the middle of teaching James Baldwin's speech, A Talk to Teachers, which is basically about teaching kids how to set the world on fire. So that I'm keeping on in the classroom.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ivor Walker. Thoughts, comments.
Well, I have 2, actually, I'll say 3 people that I have to continue to encourage. The 2 that are on the screen right now, Marcus Walker, Franziska Blum, and my daughter, April Walker, who is not, I know she joined in earlier, but April is also involved in spreading as much good work and helping people to recognize what's going on as possible. So kudos to all 3 of you all. I'm not being prejudiced by calling you out as my family, but it is what it is. I put it
you are allowed.
I put it where I see it. Okay. So,
no worries at all. Thank you so much. Bobby Anderson, thoughts?
I will say education and vote. This conversation has been very encouraging for me, and I know I'm on the right path in the right direction. So this was all confirmation. Keep on teaching, Marcus Walker. Keep on teaching, brother. Ivor, Franziska, thank you. Lisa, Jay Chester, Jim, all you guys, Carole, y'all all do wonderful work. Keep on educating and vote.
Got it. Awesome. Franziska, comments, thoughts?
We just gonna have to keep looking forward, going forward, but looking back at what, not forget the history, keep learning from it, keep bringing it up, keep teaching it, keep reminding. I think that's the only way to go forward.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you. Jay Chester Johnson, comments and thoughts.
I have just one comment, and I think the examples are important for our history and our future. And I just hope that people, not only in Arkansas, but outside of Arkansas, take a look at what Lisa Hicks Gilbert is trying to do in Phillips County as an example of what can be done, both in terms of efforts of development and history, but also inspiration. That and there's so much on both sides, white and black, that need to look at a person like Lisa and the sacrifice and generosity that she exudes for the common good and goodwill towards solving this kind of the major issues that we're facing. And I just congratulate her. And as I said earlier, I'm in awe of what she's been doing.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm going to ask, before I have Lisa speak last, I'd like for all of our guest speakers to just stay on. We're going to end the program, cut the recording off, but I'd like to just say something to you before we break up and go in our different directions. Mayor Lisa Hicks Gilbert, you started all this. Take it away in terms of your closing comments.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, so much for being here. One of the reasons why something like this is so powerful, I'm sitting in a community that's still racially divided. Main Street still divides us. There's still so much healing to be done here. There's still so much transgenerational trauma. There's still so much silence. And I knew that coming in as the first Black mayor here, combined with running this organization, Descendants of the Elaine Massacre of 1919, that there would be some controversy. And there has been, but it's been important to understand that people heal in different ways. But there's also been a lot of people who've reached out from both sides who are saying, I'm so grateful for the work you're doing. I don't want to talk about it publicly, but you will be amazed at the people who are descended from perpetrators who are excited about this work because they don't want, they want the next generation to be better than our generation, as our generation wanted us, before us wanted us to be. So thank you all so much for contributing to this, for being here today. Thank you to our audience members. I'm going to issue a challenge because it's so important that I wear this t-shirt. And when I put a t-shirt on, I do everything. I 100% try to stand by it. So when I create this t-shirt and this slogan, Silent No More, I mean this. And when there was an effort to block, stop, prevent AP African American history from being taught in our schools here in Arkansas, I was devastated. There are so many things I wanted to do and say, but I didn't. I say, keep it about the work, because the work will tell the story and it will encourage other people to tell their stories. So I have a challenge, and one of the challenges is for all of our historical Black colleges, all of our colleges, but specifically our historical Black colleges, our HBCUs, invite us into those spaces to speak. When you don't invite us, you help the silence. You help perpetrate that silence. Our Black churches, we have huge Black churches all over this country who could help us when anyone tries to prevent our stories from being told, Black history from being told, American history from being told. When you don't invite us into those spaces, you help perpetrate that silence. So that's my challenge to historical Black colleges and to our Black churches. Help us continue to tell our stories and to tell this American history.
Very powerful, very powerful. And in addition to the HBCUs, all my family members went to HBCUs. The PWIs need to hear this story as well. Those are the predominantly white institutions. So the Harvards, the MITs, the Curry colleges, all of the schools, Emory University, all need to hear this story. This has been a great conversation, and I think a beginning of what we hope will counteract this movement of banning books and banning conversation and AP classes, and the silence that is reverberating all over the country needs to be put to an end by these kind of conversations. Audience members, thank you so much. You've got a great conversation going on. The chat will be available afterward. We've recorded this, and we'll let you know how you can get access to it. Thank you all so much. And speakers, you stand by. We'll have just a brief wrap up from you. But again, thank you very much for this really powerful program. And hopefully it will be the catalyst for change that is necessary in your particular community. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.